This is the homework helper for Chapter 12, Section 3 in the 8th grade workbook using slopes and intercepts. Let's go and start off with question number 1 and 2 here. We'll go ahead and tackle number 2. You're going to use the same approach, though, in question number 1. It's asking me to find the x and the y-intercept of each line and then use the intercepts to graph the equation. So when we're using the intercepts method, we're going to have one dot on the x-axis and one dot on the y-axis. When we have a dot on the x-axis, that means that the y number is 0. So one time through, I want to go ahead and change this equation to say y equals 0 and figure out what x is. Well, if I change this y into 0, this is going to be 3 times 0, which is just going to go away. So it's going to leave me 2x equals 12. Well, of course, in that situation, x would have to equal 6 because 2 times 6 is 12. So we now know that my x-intercept is 6. And they want us to write that down formally, so we'll come down here and say that the x-intercept is 6. If you want to write it as a point, you can write it as 6, 0. All right, now when we want to find the y-intercept, that means the dot's going to be on this line, and in that scenario, the x point is going to equal 0, and so that's when I'm going to go ahead and find y. Well, when I let the x point equal 0, this is going to disappear. So it's going to say 3y equals 12. Well, we know that 3 times 4 is 12, which means y must equal 4. So the y-intercept point here is going to be 4. Put that dot there at 4. If you want to write it as a point, we can write 0, 4, and we'll connect those points, and there's the graph of the line for 2x plus 3y equals 12. All right, let's go ahead and continue on here. Into the next section, the directions ask me to write the equation in slope-intercept form, and then we're supposed to find the slope and the y-intercept. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at question number 5 there on the right side. We've got x minus 5y equals 10. So what you're doing here is you're rearranging the equation, and you're using the idea of solving equations to do that, but you're never really actually solving an equation. When I say we're using the ideas behind solving an equation, what do I mean is we're going to use that opposite side to the opposite part to move things around a lot. But you're never really going to combine anything because you really don't have any like terms. Now, slope-intercept form always has to look the same. It's going to start off with y. It's going to equal a number times x, and that number is represented in the form of m, which represents the slope. And then it's always written as plus b. Of course, this could end up being a negative number, really, or a minus sign that really doesn't have any impact. But this b here at the end, this lone number here, that's going to equate to your y-intercept. And of course, that's helpful because if m is the slope and b is the y-intercept, that's how we answer the questions here, because it's asking me for the slope and the y-intercept. So, if we look at this equation, x minus 5y equals 10, let's go ahead and look at what we need here. We need this y thing to be here on the left side. So y being on the left side is a good thing. And we need a plain J number out here at the end. Well, as you can see, we do have this constant here, 10, on the right side of the equal sign hanging out. So that's okay. But the x and the 5, those aren't very good. So we're going to have to move both of those. So it's a question of what order do I do that in? Well, hopefully you remember from two-step equations, multi-step equations, the thing that's connected to the variable is always the last thing to move. So I can't move 5 because he's directly connected to the variable y. So the first thing that has to move before I can do that is to move x. How would I move x to the other side of the equal sign? Well, I do the opposite. That's just like we were solving an equation. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract x from both sides. So x minus x goes away, and I have negative 5y equals 10 minus x. Now this isn't bad. We're not quite there yet. We've still got some steps to do. But this right side here is a problem. Because if we look at how this is supposed to be written on the right side, the x thing is actually supposed to be first. So what I want to do is go ahead and flip this right side around. I'm not inverting left and right. I'm just fixing the right side so it says the same thing, but it's in the correct order now. So I'm going to go ahead and fix this little mess here and rewrite this as negative 5y equals negative x plus 10. Now, if you're struggling with that, realize here, when I wrote it here, the minus sign was in front of x. So when I rewrite it, that same sign still has to be in front of x. Notice it doesn't mean minus anymore, though, because there's no number in front of it, so now it changes into negative. Here, 10 was a positive number. So when I rewrite it, I want to act like it's positive if there's nothing in front of it. Well, if I change that to minus in front of the 10, it certainly wouldn't look like positive 10. It would look like negative 10. So by writing a plus there, it has the same meaning as it did right here. Okay, so we're close here. The problem now is this negative 5 that was in front of the y, because this is just supposed to be y here. So we're going to go ahead and fix that by dividing by negative 5. The reason I'm dividing here is because if I'm doing solving an equation and I'm moving something to the other side of the equal sign, of course I'm doing the opposite. The opposite of multiplying by negative 5 is to divide by negative 5. Now what's different here, usually we would just divide this whole side by negative 5 and say, figure it out. But that's not an option here because these guys will never go together. So you're going to divide each part by negative 5, each term. Over here, that's just going to leave you y, which is great because that's exactly what we wanted. Here I've got negative x over negative 5. Well, there's not a whole lot to simplify there, but because we do have a negative and a negative, that's going to flip into being positive. So we could write that as just x over 5, or if you want, you can stick a 1 in front of the x and write it as 1/5 x. Of course, as you know by now, we can always stick a 1 in front of any variable and it would have the exact same meaning. And then this guy over here, 10 divided by negative 5, that's going to change into negative 2. And there's my equation in slope-intercept form. Not done yet, though, because remember, the directions now not only ask me to go ahead and write that equation, but they ask me to go ahead now and identify the slope and the y-intercept. Well, the y-intercept, again, is this b number that's out here at the end, negative 2. So the y-intercept is at negative 2. So if I graph this line, it's going to go through the y-axis at negative 2. Slope here is this guy in front of x. All right, well, that's going to be this 1/5 here. Slope of 1/5, since that's a positive number, that means it's going to go up from left to right. Slope of 1/5 means is after I graph this point, for instance, negative 2, to get to my next point, I'm going to go up 1 and right 5, and that'll get me to my next point.